Hey everybody, it's John King, and it is ready for my launch of what to expect for the California Dream for All program that is coming out later on this spring. Super excited to have everybody here. We're going to cover a lot of information in the next hour, and hopefully you'll come away with a better understanding of what we know so far, but I want to make it super clear. I only know what I know. There's been a lot of information that's been released specifically through CalHFA's board meetings, and I'm going to share with you the details of what we think is happening, what we know is happening, and what we don't know is happening, and then we'll be able to help you make decisions from here on where to proceed. So there's lots of different platforms people are watching on. You may be watching live, you may be watching via Facebook or which as a matter of fact, Facebook is having a problem. Hey, it's not on Facebook. Oh, well, anyway, you're on YouTube, you're on Facebook, you might be on LinkedIn. Either way, definitely, if you have questions throughout the entire presentation, please click on or add a comment to whatever platform you're watching on. It'll show up on my screen. I'll be able to address those questions and comments as we proceed. So let's go ahead and dive in and really get into the meat of what we're going to talk about today. So first of all, we are here to talk about the California Dream for All program. This program launched last year and the money ran out in 11 days. And now we've got another phase of the money that is supposed to roll out this spring. And so I want to talk about what the program is. I want to talk about how it's going to work and what you can expect. And so we're going to specifically cover what is California Dream for All? When is it coming back? What do I need to do to prepare for the next release? Should I wait for the next release or should I buy now? And then we'll have time for Q&A. All right. Before I go too far, I do want to introduce my team. So with me, although they're not able to be shown on screen right now, but I do have two of my loan officers, Gustavo Martinez and James Lungi. Both of them are amazing loan officers. And along with myself, we're all here to serve you, to serve your needs and any questions you may have. And let me fix this so you can see James's face. There you go. Now you can see all three of them. All three of us. So if you have questions about anything about this information, specifically if you were referred by your realtor is likely working with one of the three of us. If you were not referred by your realtor, then go ahead and reach out to any one of us. I do have a great question right out of the gate, and let's go ahead and dive in. My first question is, will the shortfall in the California budget affect funding of the program? That's a good question. We don't know. I've scoured the release of the 2024-2025 budget, and I see nothing about a revision or a decrease to the funding, but that is absolutely a question. Last January, the first release of the money went from 300 million down to 250 million. I believe that was a number. Maybe it was 200, whatever it was. They cut the number last January from what they originally proposed in the budget that was released in July of 22. And in January of 23, they cut the funds. So we're right at that point right now where they absolutely could cut the funds. I hope that they don't, but we're all prepared for the fact that they could. As soon as I know anything or see anything, I'll let you know. But we've got a couple weeks left in January, and that's typically when the governor is making any budget revisions that will decrease any funding to catch up on the budget shortfall. So we will see where we end up. All right. So let's go ahead and keep going with what we need to know. By the way, feel free, guys, any questions you have, ask them. I'll pull them up on screen and we can talk through them. All right. So Dodger Joe, hello from Murrieta. Great to see you, Dodger Joe. I remember you from last spring. So glad to have you back and looking forward to hopefully helping you out this spring as well. All right. Let's dive into an introduction. Most of you know what Dream for All is. I'm going to be super brief, but just in case you happen to be one of the few people who didn't pay attention last spring, Dream for All is a down payment assistance loan. You're being loaned 20%, up to 20% of the purchase price of your home, and you repay that money down the road when you sell, when you refinance, or in 30 years when you finish paying off your primary mortgage, and you pay it back with a share of your appreciation. So if the value of your home goes up by $100,000, you pay back, if you got 20%, no matter how much money you got, no matter if you got 50,000, 100,000, 150,000. It's based on you pay back the principal that they loaned you plus the percentage of how much your house has gone up. If it doesn't go up at all, you pay nothing extra. You just pay back what they loaned you. If it goes up by 100 grand and you borrowed 20%, you're paying back what you borrowed plus $20,000 as their share, the state's share of their appreciation. Let me go over real quick how shared appreciation works just as a basic overview. Again, you buy a home that's worth $500,000. Your first mortgage is for $400,000. You get $100,000 from the state. And then 5 years later, you sell the house. Let's pretend you sell it for $640,000. That's $140,000 the house price has gone up. So you get to keep $112,000 of that. The state gets $28,000 of that. Again, we've got a lot more people joining right now. So if you are jumping in and joining, please know that you can put comments in whatever platform you're in, and I'll be able to pull them up on screen and reply to those as we go. Now, when you sell the home at that moment, you're paying back $100,000 you borrowed plus the $28,000 in appreciation. Your equity is $142,000. Now, why is your equity $142,000? Because you've paid down the balance every month for the next 5 years. So you get your portion of what you've paid down the mortgage, or 30 grand, and you get your $112,000 of the appreciation. The best part, you only made payments on $400,000 of your $500,000 home. So if you're in a position, especially with how high interest rates have been, that you can't afford the payment on a $500,000 home, this is a way to make it happen. If you have the ability to buy without needing the state's money, you are way better off because you get to keep the $128,000. You're not giving it up to the state. Now, mind you, that 100 came from you in the first place, or you borrowed it as part of a bigger loan amount, but you didn't share $28,000 in appreciation. So it's a trade-off, okay? Now, when you sell the home, that money goes back to the state and they will recycle it down the road. The thinking, when the state was fat and happy and had a bunch of money, the thinking was that they were going to give us, hold on a second, let's fix this right here. The thinking was the state was going to give us $500 million last year, $1 billion this year, and $1 billion every year for the next 10 years. So we basically had $10.5 billion of money sitting in this fund that was going to recycle into perpetuity. That's the goal. We've fallen way short. We're basically getting the $500,000 allocation that we were supposed to get the first year. They spread it out over the first 2 years. And I honestly am worried that we're not going to have any money next year. I feel like they earmarked 500 grand. They postponed 200,000 of it into 2024, this year right now. So we got a portion of it last year. We got a portion of it this year. What I did see in the budget was $0 for the 24-25, meaning the year that starts July 1st of 24 through June 30th of 2025, $0 allocated for Dream for All. The state has a significant budget shortfall. So F Sharp had asked, hey, do we think it's going to impact this year's money? It might. What I feel more concerned about is we're not going to see any money next year, maybe even not the year after that. So this is a good chance to be the last opportunity in the next few years to take advantage of this program. I don't know for sure, and I'm not a fiscal expert when it comes to reading the state budget. I don't know if anybody is. It's kind of scary that some of our lawmakers also are not, but that's another story. But the bottom line is that I actually saw in the budget where it says Dream for All, and it showed $500,000 allocated in 22, zero in, which is a 22-23 budget, zero in the 23-24 budget. Now, I was worried. Why would it say that? Well, because the $500,000 from the first year was carried over. That's how we have money to spend right now. But there's also zero money set for 24-25's budget. So I think this might be our last year of getting money for Dream for All. All right, so let's keep going through. What are the triggering events where you have to pay it back? Again, guys, this is the same stuff as last year. I'm moving pretty quickly here. When you sell the home, the state gets 20% of the appreciation. When you refinance, and by the way, all of these rules technically can change in version 2, but I've listened to every one of the board meetings multiple times. They've not discussed changing any of the other rules, so I don't expect them to. You, in the current version, the original version, were allowed to refinance once without triggering repaying the state, but only if you're refinancing to lower your rate. If you're refinancing to pull cash out of the property, you have to pay back the state immediately. Now, that might be a good thing, but just recognize you don't have the option of refinancing multiple times to lower your interest rate and payment. Because at one point, after you do it the first time, the second time you go to refinance to lower your rate, you can do it and you'll lower your rate. You're not going to lower your payment because you're now going to make your primary mortgage amount bigger because you have to pay the state back at that time. It makes it even more critical to time when you do the first refi. I'm actually reaching out to all of my clients. I helped 9 clients last year take advantage of this program. And I'm going to be reaching out to all of them as rates start coming back down to make it clear, guys, don't jump the gun, because you only have one bullet in that gun. And if you refinance too early, you won't be able to refinance a second time without paying back the state. And then the third time, let me actually make this a little bigger so you can see it better. The third way you have to pay it back is in 30 years when you pay off your primary mortgage. So many people last time misunderstood this. I talked to so many buyers who said, okay, John, so if I keep the primary loan for 30 years, I never refinance, I never sold the home, the money's forgiven, right? Wrong. The money is not ever forgiven. So in 30 years, when you finish paying off your mortgage, you have to pay this money back, okay? Oh, come on, PowerPoint. There we go. CalHAF will order an appraisal at that time. You write them a check or you refinance to take out a new loan to pay them back with their share of appreciation. Again, most people refinance at that time, and there's a cap of 2.5 times your original balance. So real quick, is this a good idea? Let's talk about it. The pros, you're only making a payment on 80% of the purchase price. You have offset, obviously, the affordability problem we've been dealing with because you're only making a payment on 80% of the purchase price. No mortgage insurance, and you get to buy a better home than you would have otherwise with a lower monthly payment and no longer renting. What are the cons? Reduced proceeds from the sale of your home. You pay 100% of the cost of selling. So if your house goes up by $100,000, the state says, hey, you're paying us 20% of that 100 grand. You're like, yeah, but I got to spend a portion of that to pay my realtors. And the state says, I don't care. You still pay us 20% of how much it's gone up. And you can only refinance once without triggering repayment. So let's talk about the rules the first time. You got to be a first-time home buyer. This part is changing, by the way. The first-time home buyer, there's a new rule that you have to be a first-generation home buyer. I'll go through that in more detail. No cosigners, 680 FICO score, Fannie Mae conventional loan only, owner-occupied only. And the first time you were able to combine up to 30% of your own money with the state's 20%. That's gone. The most you can put in is 5% of your own money plus closing costs. That's the most you can put in. All right. And they allowed bankruptcies, a Chapter 7, 4 years old, or a Chapter 13 could be 2 years old. And it had to be 7 years after a foreclosure, unless that foreclosure came in as part of a bankruptcy. Long story there. Anyway, most of these rules are the same. The only rules that I expect to be different are going to be the first-time homebuyer issue and the fact that you can't come up with 30% of your own funds. So when's it coming back? Well, first of all, this time around is $255 million. Now, I don't understand the math. It's kind of fuzzy. But basically, there was $200 million allocated for this year that somehow got rounded up to 220 by the time that the state gave the money in September. And then there was excess money left over from the first round, money that they didn't give away, to the tune of about $25 million, $35 million, something. Anyway, it all adds up to $255 million. So you have $255 million, which is about 2,000 families. Remember that number, 2,000. It's going to be critical in a couple of minutes. Remember, if you have any questions, feel free to post them into chat at any point in time. So what changes are they implementing? First and foremost, it's going to be a lottery system. Let's stop and talk about this lottery system for a minute. The lottery system is going to be a portal that is opened up in spring. Now, spring, originally they were saying March, April. There's been some delays, and so they're now saying maybe April or May that the portal will be opened up, and we believe there's going to be a 30-day window to submit your request into the portal. Your request does not guarantee you anything except a chance to play the game. And at the end of the time period the portal is open, they're going to close the portal, and they're going to draw people out of the portal to see if you've won the right to use this money to purchase a home. Now, I want to stop and be really clear. You do not want to be, and you do not need to be in contract at the moment you're submitting into the portal. You shouldn't be in contract. Unlike the first version, where you had to rush to get into contract, find whatever home was out there, because that's how you got your place in line. They've fixed that. They've switched it around. So now what they're doing is they're saying, hey, look, if you put your name, when you put your name into the portal, you don't need to have a home selected, but you have to wait 30, 45, 60 days. I don't know how long it's going to take for them to pick out of the portal. Now, you're going to think it's random, but it's not. You're going to think that, John, if it's not random, then who do I have to pay off to get it? No, it's not about who you have to pay off. But here's the deal. They're going to make sure that the demographics of the applicant pool is matched by the demographic of the people selected. They're also going to select people by geography. I'll give you more about geography in a minute. But what I mean by that, and they're also, so they're going to look at geography, they're going to look at race and ethnicity, and they're going to look at income. And so if 75% of the people who apply make less than $100,000 in that particular geographic region, then 75% of the lottery tickets that are picked or that are pulled are going to come from people that are making less than $100,000. Okay. If 22% are a particular ethnicity, then 22% of the applicants, then 22% of the lottery tickets pulled are going to be from that ethnicity. And geography is a big one. They're going to base the geography on where you live at the time that you put the application into the portal, and they're going to compare that to what the state population numbers are. And I'll show you a chart in just a second. Now, once your name is picked, you have a time window. They've alluded to 90 days. I'm not positive, but I feel like that's the number. They alluded to 90-day window from the time you get your lottery ticket winnings to find a home. Now, do you have to close escrow in that 90 days or just lock your interest rate? I don't know. But what I do know is they're going to give you a period of time. This fixes one other problem from last year, which is if you canceled the house because there was a problem with an inspection, you lost access to the money. Well, this time they're saying, no, we're not going to do that to you. If you cancel the house, then you still have your lottery ticket. You didn't redeem it. So therefore, you can still use your lottery ticket to buy another house within that original window. Okay. But you got to act with a sense of urgency. You don't want to get into escrow on day 60 of a 90-day window and find out on day 80 that this house is not going to work for you. And now you have 10 days left to find a home. So you definitely need to act with a sense of urgency. All right. So what other changes are they implementing? They are going to make it need-based, meaning if you don't need help with your down payment, they're not going to give it to you. Now, they're not going to check your assets and say, oh man, you have too much money in the bank, you can't use this program. But what they are going to do is they're going to say, look, before we made a mistake. We said you could put 20% of your own money and 20% from us for 40% down. Darn, you could put 30% of your own money and 20% from us for 50% down. That was the biggest down payment you could put. And this time they realized that's not a good idea. We're basically taking somebody that has 25% of their own money for a down payment and giving them an extra 20% so they can put 45% down. I understand the concept of other people's money, just like everybody. But the truth is, this is designed to help home ownership for someone that otherwise couldn't become a homeowner. And if you had 25% of your own money for a down payment, you could become a homeowner. You didn't need this program. So they're fixing that or changing that so that the most you can put of your own money is 5% down plus the closing costs. Here's another big change, big change, is they are limiting the amount of money that can go to any one person. I had 2 buyers that purchased homes over $1 million last year. One was in the Bay Area, one was in Los Angeles County. And those 2 buyers each got 20% of the purchase price for over $200,000 a piece. And so they've said, you know what, that's just too much money. Rashawn, I see your question. I'll get to it in just a second. So they said, we are offering too much money on the high end of the price range. And so if you buy $1 million home, you still get the access to $150,000, but really anything over a $750,000 purchase price, they're saying you're not going to get 20%, you're going to get $150,000. And that's the most that you're going to be able to utilize. But that's still 15% down on $1 million home. That can get you pretty far. Your bigger challenge is the income limits. And what the income limits are, they've come down. So it's really going to be hard to qualify for $1 million home when you can't meet a certain income limit unless interest rates drop significantly. And that's going to be the wild card. But that's both good news and bad. And I'll cover more about that in just a second. So let me pull up. Roshana has a question here. She said, how about DPI with regards to how much pre-approval for 100,000? So it's going to depend on your credit. It's going to depend on your income. That's a question that we will cover one-on-one. So this isn't really an easy one for me to answer on this forum, but we can set up a time to meet and talk on the phone or have a Zoom call, and we can have a discussion about how that part's going to work. Okay, so let's go ahead and head back over here. We talked about the cap of $150,000. Okay, so let's look at the states. This is the geographic regions that the state is looking at. Okay, I'm going to make this as big as I possibly can. Let's see here if I can make myself a little bit smaller in the corner. There we go. All right. So what you see is you see up here, the northern part of the state is kind of chopped off, and it's the rural areas, northern and the foothills. That's 4% of the state. The capital region is 6%. Bay Area is 21. Central Coast is 6%. Central Valley is 10. Inland Empire is 11. LA is 25%. Now that's not LA County, that's the LA region, is 25% of the state's population. Orange County is 8%, and then San Diego is 9%. Okay, so what does that mean to how the money was used last year? Last year, you can see that even in the rural areas, first of all, in the rural areas of the North state and the foothills, you had 7% of the Dream for All money went to those markets when it was only 4% of the states. The capital region was the winner, hands down. 16% of the money went to the capital region, where it was only 6% of the state's population. The loser was the LA area. 25% of the state's population, and only 9% of Dream for All funds were used there. Even the Bay Area did way better than Los Angeles. And so what you have is you have legislators that are in these regions that are saying, this is not okay. I cannot allow my region to be underserved. And so they forced the second version to say, hey, if 4% of the people live in, let's go back here. If 4% of the people live in the rural areas, then only 4% of the money goes to rural areas. And if 21% of the people live in California, 21%, in Bay Area, 21% of the money goes there. Now, guys, ladies and gentlemen, there are 2,000 people that are going to be served by this money. And so 4% of 2,000 people. Okay, so quick math, 1% is 20, which means 4% is 80 people. 80 people in the North Coast, in the entire northern part of the state and the foothills, only 80 people will be selected. 80 out of that entire area. Now, mind you, it's only 14% of the state's population, but still in that larger an area, only 80 people are going to be selected. The Central Valley, where 10% of the state's population, but 21% of the money went there, now only 10% of the money will go there. Only 200 people in the Central Valley will get access to the money. Now, why did the money go to the Central Valley compared to Los Angeles? Because homes are affordable in the Central Valley and they're not affordable in Los Angeles. Let's think about this for a second. You're talking about people that are below a certain percentage of income and they're trying to find a home that is livable. I had a lot of people who lived in the Bay Area that moved to the Central Valley, and they do it all the time. And a couple of them did so utilizing Dream for All funds. Now, in the statistic that the state is painting, they're saying, well, that meant the Central Valley got more of their money. No, it means you have populations leaving the Bay Area, leaving Los Angeles County and moving to the Inland Empire. Why? Because they can't afford to buy a home in Los Angeles. They'd rather commute or change their job. So F Sharp's got a question I'm going to cover really quick here, and then we'll jump back in. So he says, sorry, F Sharp, not sure. Anyway, what about if you live in a county with a lesser population but want to buy in a more populated county, for example, to Los Angeles? You have the worst luck if that's what you're doing. If you live in Los Angeles and you want to move out of Los Angeles into another area, you have the best luck. Why? Because the lottery system is based on where you live at the time you apply for the lottery. So if you apply for the lottery right now and you live in the northern Mendocino County, you literally have only 80 people of the entire North Coast. Let's go back to this map here. Get rid of your question here. All right. So only 80 people in this area of the map right here, between this area and this area. So if you say, John, I live in this area, but I'm actually moving to the Bay Area because I technically live just on this side of the line. and I'm moving to the Bay Area, which is 21% of the state's population, you lose because they're going to draw your ticket based upon where you live. Now, if you move quickly before the lottery, then you can put the lottery ticket in living in the Bay Area. And now when you buy, they can't stop you from buying anywhere you want in the state. Hear me out. They can't stop you from buying anywhere in the state. Let me say that again. They're not going to stop you from buying anywhere in the state. So if you live in an area that has higher density and higher percentage of the state's population, you're going to have a better chance of getting your ticket pulled. If you live in an area that has low density and low population, you have a very small chance of getting your ticket pulled. But once your ticket is pulled, you can buy anywhere in the state of California. They cannot and will not restrict you from buying. Now, I might restrict you because I'm going to say, how are you going to afford to continue commuting when you move from Los Angeles to Fresno? Like, that's not a normal commute. And so are you changing jobs? And if you're changing jobs, I'm not sure I can qualify you for the mortgage because of, I might be able to, but I might not be able to. Is there a stable income in Fresno? Is the same employer going to pay the same pay? Do you have a new job lined up in Fresno? All of those questions come up. But the fact of the matter is, this is one of the biggest changes is geography. And so geography is critical when it comes to utilizing this money. If you're a realtor on here, especially if you're a realtor in one of these high density, high population areas, you want to talk to buyers that are thinking of moving out of the area and get them to apply for this program because they have a really good, statistically better chance of getting qualified if you live in Los Angeles County and you're moving to, or not county, Los Angeles region, and you are moving to the Inland Empire versus if you live in the Inland Empire and you're looking to move back to Los Angeles, because it's based on where you live when you filed for the lottery entry, not where you buy. All right, I know they spent a lot of time on that, but you can see on these are notes came from the state of California, and they said the Central Valley Capital Region and Inland Empire saw a significant share of the money because homes are more affordable, obviously. Bay Area residents were helped, but they are super worried about Los Angeles, San Diego, Orange County, and the Central Coast, and they want to make sure that the share of money is allocated appropriately. All right, let's keep going. Here's one of the other things that they're doing. They are reducing income limits. Now, it's a bit of a discrepancy here because there was a slide that the state used, California Housing Association Administration, California Housing Finance Administration, CalHFA. There's a slide that CalHFA used when they talked about the drop. And they said that we're dropping from 120% to 120% of the area median income from 150, which in their calculation said that Los Angeles was dropping from 194,000 to 155,000 in maximum income. Well, here's the deal. Los Angeles County's area median income is $105,000. So 120% of that is $126,240. So there's something off with the math. I hope that the math they gave of 155,000 is the real number they're going to use in Los Angeles County, but that's still a major problem. I had a client last year that made $185,000. He had almost no debt. He was looking for a home of about $1.1 million, and he didn't qualify. He didn't qualify. Okay. You look at that and you look at saying, but that's the limit of what they can make, and I can't buy the house that is really necessary for the neighborhood that I'm trying to buy in. And so when they drop that from 194 to 155,000, they're really taking the higher end of the price range and saying, not for you. Okay. But here's the other thing that the state's going to do. The state has made it clear. We know we might not find enough people in Los Angeles region to hit the 21 or 25% number we're trying to hit. And so you'd think, well, then they're going to give the money to other regions. Nope. It is firm. It is in the writing from the state that they have to lower the income limits. They have to drive based on geography, and they have to have a first generation. I'll talk about first generation in a second. But here's the deal. The states will not just allocate money to other regions. They'll increase the income limits in that particular region to get the uptake or the percentage of people that want it to increase. So they're going to spend 25% of the money. 500 people that currently live in the Los Angeles region will get lottery tickets chosen. That is how the state has portrayed it. They're simply saying, if we don't have 500 people based on the current income limits, we will raise the income limits in order to get more people in. Now, there was some scuttlebutt from some of the board members on that, and so that could certainly change, but that's the direction that they're thinking, and I want you to be prepared for that fact. Okay, let's keep going here. All right, first generation home buyer. This is a big one, gang. Good news, what you see right now is not the final answer. Nothing is the final answer, but they've already changed this guideline. So the first generation home buyer is statutory. It is required by the state of California. The legislature has mandated that they must have every buyer using this money be a first generation home buyer. Now, what did they originally say was a first generation home buyer? It needed to be you as the home buyer having never, ever owned a home. So you could never have owned a home. And then on top of that, your parents could not have owned a home in the last 10 years. And they did add one other provision that said, by the way, if you're from the foster care system, then you're automatically considered a first generation home buyer, and they have not changed that particular rule. So if you grew up in foster care, then you are automatically considered a first generation home buyer. All right, so let's keep going and let's talk about what the state process the state went through. And they said, look, we've got to really look at 4 things to figure out what this is. We've got to look at home buyer characteristics. We've got to look at parent or legal guardian characteristics. We have to look at special circumstances, and then we have to figure out how we can make this verifiable. Now, this is where the state kind of mulled through all of this and said, what are we dealing with? They talked to stakeholders. They wanted to figure out how is the best way that we can take care of all 4 of these things. They want, hey, what if a home buyer had, because the idea is generational wealth. Being a homeowner, the theory is that you will have more generational wealth built because you're a homeowner than if you weren't a homeowner. Statistically, if your parents were a homeowner, you would have future generations having more wealth, more generational wealth passed down because your parents were homeowners. And so the state started saying, well, wait a second, what if you owned a home in the Great Recession and you lost it in the housing crash in 07, 08, or 09? Is that really your fault? Like you lost a home, you're certainly not getting the benefits of having that home ownership when it comes to wealth building. And so they're saying, yeah, okay, we gotta figure out, how do we deal with this? What if you don't know your parents? What if you're estranged from your parents? Like you grew up with them, or your parent left when you were a child and you don't know where they're at. Are you supposed to hire a private investigator and hunt them down? And the state said, no, we're going to be realistic about this, but we have to make sure it's all verifiable. And so what did the state do? They basically said, look, here's the new rule. The new rule is that you as the borrower must not have had an ownership interest in a home. That means any home that had your name on title for any reason, even if you co-signed for your sister, your dad put you on title because of whatever, your uncle put you on title for estate planning purposes. If you had ownership interest in a home for any reason, at any time in the last 7 years in the United States. So it helps people who have a hardship because of foreclosure or divorce. Time frame coincides with credit reporting, so it means that they can verify it better, and it makes sure you don't own any vacation or rental properties. The second part, to the best of your knowledge, here's the kicker, to the best of your knowledge, your parents do not now, or did not at the time of their passing, have any present ownership interest in a residence in the United States. Now, what does that really mean? Let's switch this over here real quick. So what they're basically saying is you cannot have owned a home for 7 years. Now, what isn't clear is whether it's one borrower or both. The original version said one borrower must meet the original version. Both Dream for All 1 and the first rollout of Dream for All 2's first generation home buyer said only one borrower had to meet the rule. So I think they're going to stick with that. Only one borrower has to meet this rule. So one of the borrowers, again, this part is subject to change once the rules come out, but they're saying has to have not owned a home in the last 7 years in the United States. But the parental thing, what they're basically saying is, look, if you have knowledge that your parents, one or both of them, own a home in the United States right now, you don't qualify as a first-generation home buyer, and they're not changing that. They said they got a lot of negative feedback about it, and they said, our hands are tied. The state legislature mandated that this must be given preferential treatment to people who are first-generation home buyers. They don't have a choice. And so if you say, yeah, but it's not fair because just because my parents own a home doesn't mean I shouldn't be able to own a home myself. And the thinking from the state legislature's perspective is, well, but your parents have money, so ultimately when they're gone, you're going to get that money and you can buy a home at that time. Your parents can help you out now to buy a home. You don't need as much help as people whose parents don't own a home. Now, the idea of did they own a home at their passing or not? The thought is a lot of people, and the Urban Institute commented on this and had some statistics on it that the state pulled from. But basically, people who statistically have had to sell their home prior to their passing means they probably used that money for long-term care, for other expenses. That's why they had to sell their home. And so that money is probably not there, that probably didn't pass on from one generation to another. And so if your family sold the home, if your parents sold the home before their passing and they are now deceased, you do qualify as a first-generation home buyer. But if your parents owned their home at the time of their passing, or if they currently own a home, that means you are not qualified for this program because you do not meet the qualification of first-generation home buyer. So that's critical to understand. I've had many people talk to me and say, John, what if? I haven't talked to my dad in 30 years and he owns a house in Missouri. I said, well, based on what this rule, the way the rule's written, you're aware that your dad owns a house in Missouri. Therefore, under penalty of perjury, you're gonna submit an affidavit that says, I confirm that I'm a first-generation home buyer and that to the best of my knowledge, my parents do not currently or did not at the time of their passing own a home. And they're saying they're going to be digging into this. They say they're going to be doing background research to make sure that people are not lying. Now, I believe them, but I'm also confident they can't check everybody. Is that a reason for you to lie? No, don't lie. Can they check it later? And could they check 100% of the people in the next 5 years? They sure can. Could they call your loan due immediately if they found that you were lying? They sure can. So don't lie. But the fact is, you're really attesting to it yourself. And they're saying they have ways to look it up. I don't know how they're going to do it. But the fact of the matter is, you have to be a first-generation home buyer. And again, I'm going to pull this back up on the screen so everybody's on the same page. You must be a first-generation home buyer. And unless the rules change in the next 60 days, and I don't think they will, you cannot have owned a home in the last 7 years in the United States. And to the best of your knowledge, your parents do not own a home now or did not own a home at the time of their passing. All right, so let's keep going here. Or, by the way, if you grew up in foster care, then you automatically don't have to worry about your parent part of it, but you still have to yourself have not owned a home in the last 7 years. So how can the money be used? Up to 20% for down payment and closing costs, minimum of 15% for down, and you can use 5% for closing costs. Take only what you need, gang, okay? Because you're paying it back. You're paying back a percentage of what you borrowed. You can use it to increase your buying power or to lower your monthly payment to get within a budget. So let's look at some of the numbers and see what it looks like. So here's an example. And by the way, what's funny, I'm using the exact same numbers from last year. And last year I was kind of guessing high and saying, hey, I don't know where the rates are going to be. And I was guessing kind of on the high sixes. They ended up being between 6.5% and 6%. And I'm actually going to close this for a second and have a conversation about timing. So last year they ended up being around 6 to 6.5%. We are right now on a downward trajectory of interest rates. How quickly they're going to go there, and is it going to be a straight line down? Nobody knows. But rates have been moving down, and nobody expects them to take a significant move upwards. So what is that going to mean? First and foremost, in part, it means that you might be able to take advantage of better interest rates because you're likely going to be buying in summer versus spring. And historically, interest rates have come down in presidential election years. So we have lots of things in our favor for rates to come down. We have the fact that it's a presidential election year. We have the fact that inflation is coming down, and the Federal Reserve has made it clear that they are not going to wait to lower rates. They're not going to wait for inflation to be at their 2% target to lower interest rates. And so everybody expects to see interest rates go down. The question is, how quickly do they go down? And is it a straight line down? So you're going to say, John, this is great news, because if I win my lottery ticket, I've won another lottery ticket because I've won the interest rate lottery. Careful, because you have a problem with inventory. There's not enough homes that have been built. And I've talked about this many, many times on my YouTube channel. You can actually see an hour-long video I did last week on Wednesday, where I live streamed talking about the market and where I think things are going in 2024. And I'll give you a 30-second version of it. Prices are likely to go up because there's been buyers sitting on the sidelines not buying because rates are high. Either they couldn't afford a home at those high rates, or they were just unwilling to stomach a rate that high or a payment that high. And so they said, I'm going to wait. I have lots of clients myself who are saying, I'm going to wait. Gustavo and James in my office have lots of clients that have said, I'm going to wait. But guess what? All those people are starting to call back again and saying, hey, Gustavo, hey, James, hey, John, I'm ready to start looking again because rates are coming down. Last week, one of my clients put their home on the market in the Central Valley. They put their home on the market on Monday. By Monday afternoon, they had 12 showings scheduled. The first person, and this was not a great, it was a nice home. It wasn't some unique home. Let's be clear. By mid-afternoon, the first person who had gone to visit the home wrote an offer for $30,000 above the asking price, all cash, no contingencies. And to top it all off, they said, we're only going to submit this offer if you agree to take the house off the market immediately, because we know you have a dozen other people that are looking at the home this afternoon. My client said, you know what, I could be greedy and try and go for more, but I'm happy with that. And so they took it off the market and they accepted the offer. Guys, we haven't seen that in 2 years. We haven't seen that since 2020 and 2021. Now, am I telling you that's back in full force? No. Every market's going to be different. But am I telling you we're seeing more buyers? Yes. And is Dream for All going to make the problem better or worse? It's going to make it worse, because we're going to bring more buyers in all at the same time. And what is the peak time for buying homes? Spring and summer. That is when inventory is the lowest. Why is inventory the lowest? This is confusing, but let me be really clear. It's not because there's fewer homes for sale being sold. There's fewer homes for sale because as soon as they go on the market, they're snatched up. And so there's nothing left for you to look at. So you're going to get the golden ticket. You're going to have 90 days. You're going to say, I'm so much luckier than my friends last year that had to rush to find a home. I'm not sure you are. You're lucky because you've got the ability to pick a home, but you have to be aggressive and move quickly. And you might have a great interest rate relative to what it could have been, but you're going to pay a higher price for the home. And if you're like any of my clients last year, you're actually going to pay an even higher price because you feel, man, I got 20% of free money sitting in my back pocket. That's house money. If you're a gambler, you know what house money is. That's house money. I don't care if I lose it. It's not house money. You are paying back every penny of that money and paying 20% of your appreciation. So this is a great program. I love the program, but just understand, it's not as simple as, oh my gosh, I've won the lottery. Now I can pick anything I want. It's going to be a highly competitive market because there are not enough homes out there for sale. So I'm going to get off my soapbox. I'm going to keep talking about Dream for All. All right. So let's do it this way. All right. So in a traditional $400,000 purchase price, and you are going to see a monthly payment of $3,300 and about $27,000 in cash to close. If you did that as an FHA loan, you could buy a $410,000 home. So you could increase your purchase price by going from a conventional loan to FHA, and you've got a little bit more out of pocket. You've got the same monthly payment, pretty close to the same monthly payment, and you're buying a $10,000 higher priced home. But if you use California Dream for All, you can buy a $500,000 home. You can have a loan on $400,000, and your payment is cheaper than what you were going to pay if you used a conventional loan, and you're coming up with less money out of pocket. This is how you use Dream for All to stretch your purchase price, to get you up to a higher price on a home. Okay. Now, you can also do the no cash needed option, which means you get 15% towards your down payment and you use 5% towards your closing costs. That means in this situation, you'd buy a $480,000 home and you would have a payment about the same of $3,350 a month, and you'd only need about $1,400 out of pocket. Now, some of you might say, John, I don't need a higher priced home. My God, I'm looking to just be able to afford to pay a payment. Okay, so if you're shopping for a $500,000 home, you know that's what you need. You're not trying to stretch any higher, but you know that I just can't afford the payment there. Well, you were going to spend $4,200 a month Yes, you could qualify for it, but you weren't willing to write that check. And you needed 32 grand out of pocket. Go FHA. Great. I can get your payment down $130 a month, but you need a few $1,000s extra out of pocket. But Dream for All allows you to buy a $500,000 home with a $3,300 payment with $22,000 out of pocket, 23. So it saves you $9,000 out of pocket. It saves you $875 a month. And if you go with a no cash option, you can still buy a $500,000 home and pay $700 a month less with almost no money out of pocket. So compared to option number one, where you're paying $4,200 a month for a $500,000 home with $32,000 out of pocket, you can pay $3,500 a month with a couple $1,000s out of pocket. Okay. Significantly better options. This is the benefit of the program right here. So who qualifies? We talked about it. First generation home buyer, must be a conventional loan. If you have not had your credit looked at, you need to talk to me. I can do a soft credit check. Gustavo and James on my team can do the same thing. We can do a soft credit check and we can see where you're at. We can even run it through Fannie Mae's system. We'll just do one credit report, one bureau, so that we can just get a sneak peek on what your credit looks like. You must occupy within the first 60 days of ownership, and you have to keep it as your primary residence for 1 year. No rental properties, no vacation homes. You can't use a cosigner. It's got to be you, or it's got to be you and somebody else moving in with you. Okay. Non-occupant cosigners aren't allowed. You've got to have between $1,500 and $3,000 to spend, at least a 680 FICO score. So how to prepare? First of all, make sure your credit score is in line. Do you know how many people last year that I helped with this program? I'm sorry, let me rephrase that I talked to about this program right as it was launching, and we realized they had some work to do on their credit and they needed to wait 30 days to fix it. They couldn't use the program. The money ran out in 11 days. This program, you have to be eligible at the time that you are submitting your reservation into the portal. And so if you are not qualified now, you need to have time to get qualified. You need to know what you need to fix. It's not early. It's right on time to start looking right now. If you are not already in conversation with me or another trusted lender or somebody on my team, Gustavo and James are amazing. If you're not already in a conversation with us, it's almost too late, because you might think everything is great, but if everything doesn't line up, you need to have time to fix it. Now is the time to work on that. I'm not kidding you. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm telling you how many people last year didn't take advantage of this program, and the program was better last year. And I'm worried there won't be a program next year. So let's help you take full advantage of it. All right, save up your earnest money deposit, appraisal, inspection costs, et cetera. Gang, by the way, I'm getting towards the end. So if you have questions, now is the time to start putting your questions into chat wherever you're watching. Please feel free to post whatever questions you have, and I'll be able to pull them up on my screen and answer them. So you got to save up on top of the money you need for closing costs. And again, we can cover the closing costs, but you still need money for your earnest money deposit, your appraisal, and your inspection costs. If you don't know what those are, talk to your realtor or set an appointment with myself or somebody on my team. You need to know your numbers. You need to know your payment budget. You need to know your price range, and you need to know your debt to income ratio. Now, here's something really important to talk about debt to income ratio. People are worried not as much about debt to income ratio as they are about making too much money, because the income limits are coming down. And so the thing you need to understand is the income limit is based upon the income that I calculate to qualify you for the mortgage. Now, I'm not allowed to just pick a random number. Like if you're paid $200,000 a year as a salary, I can't round that down to meet like, oh, well, they qualify at 150. So let's pretend they only made 150. Can't do that. But if you made $200,000 last year in total, but 125,000 of that was salary and 75,000 of that was bonuses or commission or overtime, well, bonuses, commission, and overtime aren't guaranteed to continue. So I can ignore that because I don't have any proof from your employer that they are going to continue. Now, it's pretty easy to get that proof. I just ask your employer to tell me if it's going to continue. I won't ask. I don't want it to continue. So therefore, I'm not going to ask them to prove that it continues. What does that mean? That means that I can count a lower income figure. I could get rid of one borrower. I'm seeing some questions come in, guys. I'll get to those as I wrap up the presentation, but please put the questions into the portal, and I'll get to them in a minute once I'm done with the presentation. So here's the challenge with CalHFA. CalHFA says that only people who are on the loan can be owners of the property. And so if you say, well, John, the limit in my county is 150 grand and I make 140 and my spouse makes 130. And so we just want to put the loan in one of our names. Okay. Well, the problem is the home ownership can only be in one of your names. Now, in that case, we would just pretend that one of you didn't have a job and we would submit no paperwork for that job. And then you're both on the loan. We're counting debts for both of you, but income for one of you. But if the debts for both of you cause you to not have a low enough debt to income ratio, then I can't include the other party, which means they cannot be an owner of the home. That means if something were to happen to you, they have to go through probate to get ownership of the property. Now, there's a workaround with a special kind of a trust where they're only becoming, having an interest in the property after you pass. And so you can set up that kind of a trust, but you as the borrower are the only one that have interest and control over that trust. And you are the only trustee and you're the primary beneficiary. And so there's ways to work around it, but it's complicated. So just be aware, if we eliminate one person from the loan completely, they also get eliminated from being an owner of the property, and that can create estate planning issues. A lot of lenders don't understand this, so just be careful and make sure you're getting the right information. All right, so what else do you need to do? You need to pick a realtor. You got to start narrowing down your home search, get an idea of what price range you want, where you want to live. Home buyer education. Here's the deal. This was a major, did I say major? This was a major problem last year. It's not as big of a problem this year. Why? Because last year you had to have the home buyer education in order to write an offer. Well, not to write an offer. Basically, at the same time, you had to have an offer written and a property accepted, and you had to get your loan interest rate locked, and you had to get your education done. And so everybody's jumping in to get their education in case they get an offer accepted. And it created a backlog that was upwards of 90 days. Now, a lot of people went ahead and they completed the education. The education you did last year, the one that you paid $100 for, the 8-hour education, that's good for 12 months, but it means we have to close escrow by the 365th day after that education, okay? It is good for a year. Once you get your lottery ticket picked, that's when you go to your education, or that's when you confirm that it's still good. If you didn't get a lottery ticket, no point in spending money for the education. So this is not going to be anywhere near as challenging of an issue as it was previously. You also have to do education about how shared appreciation works. That's free. It's online through the state of California. Again, don't worry about that unless or until you get your lottery ticket picked. So there is no rush this time. Final thing real quick. Should I just buy now? Here's the deal. If you can afford a payment today and you have some money for a down payment assistance program or down payment yourself right now, I believe you are better off buying without using this program. You don't have to worry about the lottery system, the lottery process. You don't have to worry about how competitive things are going to be, because I believe they're going to get more competitive the further we go through this market, okay? I have 6 different ways to buy a home with 0 down. This is just one of them. And so if you're saying, John, but I need to have 0 down payment, I've got ways to make it happen. You don't need to hope for the lottery. And by the way, did I mention less competition? All right, guys. So once again, real quick, my team and I are here to serve you. So take a screenshot right now of our contact information so that we can help you throughout this process. I'm going to get to questions in just a minute. I'll come back to this screen here and leave it up. So if you do want to start, if you want to use me, I apologize to the team. I don't have one of these up for you guys, but you can reach out to them directly. But if you do want to start the application process and you want to use my services, scan the QR code that's on the screen right now. It will actually download my mobile app directly to your phone, and you can actually start the process immediately. And for the first 5 people that sign up, a free set of nothing. I'm just kidding. No pressure. Guys, it's just you need to get started. And whether it's me, whether it's somebody on my team, whether it's somebody else somewhere else, you need to start, and you need to start now. If you have friends or family who are interested in getting information about this program, scan this QR code. You can forward them a short video about the Dream for All program, and they can subscribe to my YouTube channel on there as well. And finally, let's do some quick Q&A. Again, here is the application link, but I'm going to go backwards here, and I'm going to leave it up with my team's contact information. So you got that all right there. And let's go through some of the questions. So Jose asks, do you need to be approved for a loan before you submit a ticket into the portal? It is, they said that you have to be pre-approved. So it has to be with a Cal HFA approved lender. The question is, who submits the ticket in the request into the portal? I don't know if I do that or if you do it, Juan, or excuse me, Jose. They haven't made it clear. But what they have said is that you have to be pre-approved. They're going to validate your information. They're going to validate to make sure that you are eligible, that you don't exceed the income limits. They said they're going to go through all of that stuff. I don't know how they're going to go through it with that many people who are applying. It really is a major worry of mine. Is the portal itself going to get bogged down? Is the portal going to shut down and be way backlogged? So that's my concern on how they're going to accomplish that. Roshana asked a question: if you have $388,000 loan and purchase a home for $400,000, what can we expect to pay out of pocket? So again, I gave a pretty good idea based on a $400,000 and a $500,000 purchase price, Roshana. I don't want to get too specific into that scenario. That's something you and I can talk about offline. BCPRM says, because my parents own a home, I don't qualify. What options that are similar in your opinion? First of all, if you happen to live or want to relocate to the San Diego County region, there are some programs in San Diego County that mirror this in a lot of ways. As a matter of fact, some of the San Diego County city programs can give upwards of 25% for your down payment. So if you happen to be in San Diego or you want to move to San Diego, there's some amazing programs down in the San Diego area. But there's nothing like Dream for All. There's nothing. There's literally nothing like Dream for All. The Dream for All program is the best down payment assistance program I've ever seen in my entire career. There are other, now again, I've told you 100 times why I think there's things that are bad about it and why you should buy now. And so BC, what I'll tell you is that the Cal HFA My Home program is a good program. It gives you 3% or 3.5% for your down payment. That's very small. So you're making a bigger payment because you're paying on a larger portion of the house, but you're only paying them back 1% interest per year. And that's 1% of what you borrowed. So if you bought a $500,000 home and you get 3% from the state, that's $15,000 they loaned you. That means that every year your interest is 1% of that. And so you're talking about what? On $15,000, we're talking about $150 a year. $150 a year. That's all they're adding. So when you sell the house, you sell it in 10 years. You pay them back the $15,000 plus $1,500. You pay them back $16,500 in 10 years, and you keep all the rest of the appreciation. House prices go up on average 3 to 6% per year. And it's been closer to the higher end of that range in the coastal states, California, Oregon, Washington, the East Coast states. And so the values of homes go up, but you get three main benefits from financially from owning a home. And I'd be remiss if I didn't go through this very quickly. So your first benefit is appreciation. And even if you have the Dream for All program and you're giving up a portion of it, you're still getting a good amount of money in appreciation. But BC, you're getting 100% of the appreciation if you use a different program like Cal HFA's My Home program. But the second benefit is tax deduction. You get zero tax write-off when you're a renter. Nothing, none, zip, zilch, zero. And so instead, what you've got is you've got the money all going to your landlord. And now you get a tax write-off because you're a homeowner. And especially, unfortunately, with these high interest rates, that tax write-off helps you say you're paying a lot more in interest, so you get a lot more of a tax write-off. But the third major benefit of home ownership is principal reduction. Every single month, part of your payment goes back into your future equity because you're paying down the balance. And so whether you become a homeowner through Dream for All or through a different program, I am interviewing for the role of being your lender. My team, Gustavo and James, are interviewing for the role of being your lender. We'd love the opportunity, BC, to help you out. And there are multiple other assistance programs that we can utilize to get you into a house with zero down payment and often zero closing costs. By the way, zero closing costs is really more like a couple $1,000s is the least we need to get from you. But the ability to get zero closing costs comes with the seller's help. And the tighter this market gets, the more buyers there are compared to sellers, the harder it's going to be to get a seller to help you with closing costs. And so if you're looking for that, now is the time to make it happen, right now. All right. Judy says, thank you, John, and thanks for the invite, Gustavo. Absolutely, Gustavo, of course, being a great loan officer as I trained him to be, responds. Of course, Judy, happy you're able to attend. And my last question, and then I'll wrap. By the way, if you have more questions, feel free to post them. But I like to start on time and end on time, and it's been an hour. So Rolando says, what if my brother and dad are in the same loan for a home? Does that automatically disqualify me? I don't know how their loan is set up. So that's a great question. Your dad is not current. If your dad has, so this is the question of, does everyone on the loan need to meet the first generation home buyer or not? I don't know. I don't know. But let's pretend that they all do. So your brother and you, both of you have to say, hey, have either one of you owned a home in the last 7 years? If the answer is no, then you're fine. And then we say, does your dad or mom, for you or your brother, own a home now or at the time of their passing? Well, your dad doesn't, because he's helping, I'm assuming, because he's buying with you. But then they're going to look at your dad and they're going to say, Dad, as the borrower, have you owned a home in the last 7 years? Hopefully the answer is no. Then they're going to say, fine, Dad, have your parents owned a home in the United States, or do they own a home that is, did they own a home at the time of their passing in the United States? So they're kind of looking at each tier. The big question is everybody on the loan have to meet that criteria? I've got mixed signals. I'm giving you mixed signals because I don't know what the exact answer is going to be. All right, Rolando says, thank you. Appreciate that. Dodger Joe signed up. Yes, Dodger Joe, by the way, I'll say this now that you've signed up. I'm a Giants fan. Northern California, grew up in the Bay Area. I'm still going to take great care of you, but I don't want to lie to you. I don't want to start out our relationship on a lie, Dodger Joe. I hate the Dodgers, but it's bred into me. Like, that was a thing from birth that, like, my parents forced me to be, a Giants fan. And so I am, but I still am going to take great care of you, but I didn't want to lie to you and make you think that I like the Dodgers. Because, well, you're not allowed to like the Giants. I'm not allowed to like the Dodgers. Romeo and Juliet, we're just not supposed to like each other, but we're still going to have a great relationship. So this is our Romeo and Juliet moment. All right. Yes, the feeling is mutual. I am positive. Fair enough. All right, guys, if there's no other questions, I really appreciate everybody joining. I hope you have an absolutely wonderful rest of your evening, and please get started immediately. You've got the information right here. I'm going to pull it up and make it larger on the screen. And let me get rid of myself so that James is not gone. Oops, wrong way, John. Let's do it this way, and let's get rid of Dodger Joe's comments. And guys, thank you for joining. Have an absolutely wonderful rest of your night, and we'll talk to you all very, very soon. Good night.